y'all can probably hear me, right? And see me. Everything should be good to go on that regard. Let me know if there's any technical issues. So my name is Sasha. I welcome you to our Intro to Java for Python Developers thing. I'm guessing all you guys are from COMP250 and have used Thonny in the past. That's what I'm going to be focusing this around. I'm going to assume everybody here is familiar with COMP250 and Thonny. If you used something else like PyCharm, it's going to be super easy for you to get switched over to Java, like no problem, because we're basically using the same IDE as PyCharm just for Java. If you use IntelliJ, and of course Eclipse exists as well, but it's quite a bit harder to use, so that's not what I'll be focusing on today. Alright, so before we get started, I'd like to give you guys a feel of what we can do in COMP250. So for that, I'll play this quick 1-minute clip from last semester to show off some of the coolest stuff we've done. Afterwards, there will be a recap of the things I did in the general session, for those of you who didn't see that. It'll be really quick, and then I'll get into the meaty stuff about transitioning to Java. So right from the start, I'll be doing that quick video feed to show you guys exactly what to expect by the end of the course.
Man, I have another assignment to do, but you know. Yeah, I'm sweet like a honeybee, working like a busy bee. I'm counting ones and zeros cause my money tree is binary. I'm earning it recursively, got hornets never hurting me. Got Horner's method perfectly, my error codes are burgundy. I'm running on infinity, a space of polynomials. I'm crunching on my data like this where the guacamole goes. One for my father and another for the Holy Ghost. Climbing to the top until the call stack overdosed. Wait, that's a lot to take in, I know. I'm not doing this shit for a grade, though it's for show. You could call me a show off. I'm about to go off. Just give me 10 years and then watch me blow up. Or just 10 lines of code, man, I can't be stopped. Thorn in your side like shelter da-da-da. I don't vibe with graphs cause the knowledge is lacking. But when I murder the beat, the content is graphic.
Alright, so hopefully you didn't miss too much of that glorious rap there. It was just cut off from the beginning because my settings were not ideal, but that should give you a feel of what you guys can expect from COMP250, and that's the kind of stuff you can create. Those are some of our top students last semester, and it was just showing off all the various projects that were done. Unfortunately not on Spotify yet, but if you go to the website at the end of the video, you can get a download of it. But yeah, that's like the best stuff we've seen last semester, and this is the stuff we're hoping that you guys will come up with yourselves in COMP250. But to start off, actually, I'd like to tell you guys something you probably don't expect to hear, and that is that COMP250 is not really a course on Java at all. In fact, it doesn't really have to have anything to do with Java. It's actually a course on data structures and like algorithms and that kind of stuff. And the more we go into COMP250, the less we will actually see of Java, and the less we'll care about Java. So when I give you the intro to Python, I'm actually going to be giving you like kind of the stuff you need to get started, but you're not going to be able to do all the same things you used to do in Python because that's not the focus of COMP250. So we won't have very detailed list comprehension. We won't have the equivalent of NumPy or any of the other libraries you saw like matplotlib, whatever else it is you're working with. We're not going to see those ones in this or equivalents to them. We're going to see syntax equivalents. We're going to see some similar stuff. But it's not going to be the same because that's just not what the course is about. Now to get us started, I'm going to send you guys a Google Doc link, and that's going to have a dictionary of all these Python terms and things you saw in Python before, and the Java equivalents. And it's in the chat right now. It'll be on the description on the upload for the recording. And in that link, you'll see all sorts of quick cheat sheets, differences, the stuff I could come up with. Now, if you see something that's missing, you guys have comment access, so you can comment on it and you can say, oh, I believe that this is off, or I want to include something else. This is just the quick one I was able to come up with like within a couple of minutes. Not a couple of minutes, like maybe an hour or two before this. So it's not going to be super robust. You guys can suggest. In fact, I recommend that you guys suggest and comment and add more stuff so we can kind of crowdsource a really, really great Java to Python dictionary together. That's kind of our goal here. But again, COMP250 is not about Java. It's about data structures and algorithms. And the more we get into it, the less we're going to care about Python or Java or anything. We're not even going to be thinking about programming languages. We're going to be thinking about the core concepts of the course. Now, getting started with that, we'll just show back to the Thonny IDE here. And in Thonny, I've got a simple print statement hello world program. And we notice how it runs from the top line to the bottom line, right? Like we all know this. We've seen it before. In Python, we run from line 1 here down to line 4, right? Make sense to everyone? All right, but that's not exactly the case in Java. I'm going to give you guys now a quick recap of what we did in the previous session, so we can get you up to speed on your environment that you're going to be working with in Java. We've got two IDEs that we work with, and that's either IntelliJ or Eclipse. The download instructions for those are posted on my courses, and if you have questions about that, you're welcome to ask at the end, or we're going to help you, like with the previous session, you can watch the recording, and that goes into a lot of detail. But I'm going to assume right now that you guys have either IntelliJ or Eclipse or both. I'm going to be focusing on IntelliJ because it's easier to use, and it's more intuitive for a beginner, and it's generally just a more simple graphical interface. So you guys are going to have an easier time with that. But Eclipse is very similar, and most of the skills are transferable. You can watch the general session, which focused a little bit more on Eclipse. All right. So when we open up IntelliJ, we'll see that it can be a little bit of a daunting interface at first because it has lots of buttons. And to help you manage projects and buttons and .java files, I've prepared a little cheat sheet for you guys that will help you kind of understand this stuff. The cheat sheet is right here. I'm going to go to the first page of it because I wasn't there before. So this is the Java types of files and types of things you will see in your projects. Now, it looks like a lot of text. You're welcome to screenshot this. And if you do screenshot this, you can reference this in the future. The reason I'm showing you this now is because we're going to see a lot of buttons in IntelliJ. And most of these buttons have to do with these various things. So just very quickly, in Java, it actually matters what folders your files are in and what various files are there. Because Java files can see each other and they can interact with each other. It's not just one script. Like, you don't have to import them. If you have multiple Java files in one folder, they will actually interact with each other. So because of that, we care about having our working folder, which is where our projects are. Our projects are like each assignment, let's say, is a project. Our projects are folders in which we contain our Java code. So our project will have stuff related to our IDE. It'll have like our .project, .class path files, which have to do with your configuration, which Java version you're using, that kind of stuff. It's kind of like a venv in Python, if you remember those. I don't know if you covered virtual environments in COMP250, but that would be the parallel for that, or like a PyCharm project if you're using PyCharm. Then modules are stupid, and Eclipse creates them, and we don't care about them. Packages are like groupings of Java files, which can talk to each other more readily. And .java files are the equivalent of our .py files. Those are where our code is contained. Inside a Java file, we have a class, we have a method, we have fields, and we have local variables, which we'll get into in the later part of our session. A lot of people were asking about organization, how we should organize our files. This is my cheat sheet for organization. I'll just get rid of my overlay here so you guys can see the whole thing. We ideally have a one project folder. So for you, that could be like a COMP250 folder, or your IDEA projects folder, or your Eclipse workspace folder, whichever you're using. And in that folder, I recommend you have a separate project for every single assignment, and a separate project for your weekly exercises. Why do we recommend this? Well, the answer is simple. We don't want your code seeing other code that you can't use. For example, let's say you have, from your weekly exercises, some code that solves a problem that's also in the assignment. You might not be allowed to use a weekly assignment solution on your actual assignment submission. So if you have code that goes between the two, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. That's why the projects are separated. And then we have whatever apps you want to make on your own time. Should probably also have a separate project from COMP250. So you'd want a project for your weekly content, a project for your assignments, for each assignment, and whatever apps you want to make on your own time, probably in a separate project too. Inside the project, we'll give you what the packages and .java files are, so you don't have to think too much about it. Those are all provided. And now here is just a quick text version of how I recommend you organize. You're welcome to screenshot this. It's posted on my courses. This is to help you organize yourself, because I know it can be really daunting and you might not know which folders to put stuff in and where stuff goes. This is to help you with that. So if you ever have any wonders about that, we saw lots of questions on Piazza. This will solve those problems. Just reference this and you will know where to put your stuff, what folders go into where, when you need to create a new project. And if you have any questions about that, just let me know and I'd be happy to answer. All right, so done with the slideshow now. Unless you guys have any questions, I'll open it up. I'll open the floor to you guys if you want to ask anything. And then we can move on to the IDEs and the environment we're working in. So I'll just give you guys a little bit of time to formulate your questions if you have any. I know I went really fast there. I'm just kind of speed running the last session. If you have a question, you're welcome to just unmute and ask. I see slides look lit. Did you make them using PowerPoint? No, that was Photoshop. Tutorial, any percent sub 10. Nice. Now, if you guys have any questions about that, I can answer. Otherwise, I'll be moving on shortly to our next topic, which will be the IDE introduction. Sorry if I talk fast. I'm just trying to get through our recap very, very quickly so that we can move on to the important stuff, the Python stuff. Okay, I'm guessing there's no questions related to this. If there are, Piazza, office hours, end of the session, you're welcome to ask. Now I will move on from the slideshow back to my little virtual machine here, and we can get started in IDE. So we're going to be going a bit more... Oh, sorry, Ayman, I don't hear you. Could you say whatever you're going to say again? I could not hear what you were saying. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry about that. Yeah, you probably, if you want to be on the same IDE as Julia for the lectures, you're going to want to be on Eclipse because that's what she's using. If you want the easiest one to use and the one with the most features, the one I would recommend, it's IntelliJ. The reason that we have Eclipse and IntelliJ is because we're still switching over, so we're in the process of getting everybody on IntelliJ, and we're in the not all the teaching staff have learned it yet, so or like maybe not all of them even planning. Like we're just still doing that switchover right now, so that's why it's like a dual IDE thing. But again, I recommend IntelliJ. It's the more modern one. It's the one we want to move to, and Eclipse is the kind of legacy one that we're using because that's what most teaching staff use. So those are up to you. You can download and install both. You can use whatever you want. You can use VS Code or whatever IDE you want to use. But if you want IDE-related support, your IDE options are IntelliJ and Eclipse. That's just because we can't afford to learn like every single IDE. We just chose the two most popular ones. The one we used to use more, and the one in ECSE 202, which is Eclipse, and the one that's used in universities like UBC and just around in more modern development, which is IntelliJ. All right, so that should be that, and we can get you guys started on the IDE environment. So when you first download and install your IDE, you're going to have a view that looks like this. It'll come up in a second with the new project. And this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have all these buttons. They say like Java, empty project, blah, blah, blah. You don't care. You just want to have Java 15. If you don't have Java 15, you click download JDK, and there's this list of JDKs, and you can take Java 15 here, Oracle Open JDK, and click download. I already have it, so I just click 15. I next all the way through. I'm going to call this one for Python. All right, click finish, and it's going to open a project. Now I'll be putting it side by side with Thani, and I'll be showing you guys the same code across Thani and Java for the first bit, and then I'll go on to just Java later on, because we don't want to really be thinking about it in terms of languages. We want to be thinking about it in terms of the concepts that we're trying to apply. So instead of saying, how would I, let's say, do some list comprehension in Python, you would say, I have this issue that I'm trying to solve using my program, and how am I going to approach solving it? The reason we do that is because there's some differences between the languages, and there's sort of culture around how they work, and the solutions might actually appear to be a little bit more different than just translating between languages. So I'm going to create my new class now. It's just going to be called, welcome. So a class is a .java file. It's kind of like a .py file. But Java has a certain quirk that's different from Python. And that's that in Java, the lines actually don't run from 1, 2, 3, 4 top to bottom, or from the order that they're in. But they actually run from an entry point. Now, what do I mean by an entry point? You'll be able to see visually once I write one. So if I write public static void main string args, and now these look like magic words to us because we haven't seen this before, but they're not that intimidating. I'll explain it to you shortly. And here, if I print out, so to print, you do system.out.println. You can consult the Google Doc for that. And welcome to COMP250. Right, this will actually not run all these lines at the top. This would run the lines starting at this public static void main string args. See, if I put a bunch of enters here, right? Notice how the play button is here next to line 10. This is actually where the code starts running from. Does everybody see that? Does everybody see that we actually start the code from the play button? We don't start the code from the top line, right? Okay, that's one of the core differences, and this really gets people. And this is one of the core differences that I actually see a lot on Piazza and a lot in office hours throughout the time in COMP250. This gets people. It might not be obvious right now. A lot of you guys are following along easily. But in more complicated situations, the intuition might come in from Python that you can run top to bottom. That's not the case. In fact, I can actually do some sacrilege here. I can do some terrible things. Now look, I've defined the main here, right? So I'm going to define a method right below. And I see somebody in the chat saying that it should be string with the array initializer, then args. It actually works both ways in Java. This is suggesting that it should be a different style, but it actually will compile and run in both ways. So yes, it is technically a mistake. I'm technically wrong, but it's going to run either way. So I'm just used to doing that from C. Yeah, and if somebody else says, I'm noticing that in Java we have to explicitly ask methods to return true or false, whereas in Python that's bad style. I will get to that. I'm just going to get to this basic part of the syntax first. So now if I define a method here, let's just call it static void my method, and it's just going to also print out .println hello, right? This method can be called no matter where I write it. In Python, this would be sacrilegious because I'm defining the method after I call it. So if I type here my method, it'll actually let me call my method from here. If I run the code, to run the code, I just press the play button. It'll let me run my method right here. Whereas if in Thonny, I tried to define a method that's after my code, I couldn't necessarily call it, right? So this is one of these syntactical differences between Java and Python. It's that it doesn't matter in which place you put your methods. They're going to be able to be called from anywhere in your code. The reason that's the case is that Java is what's called a compiled language, so this code is not what's actually running on your computer. What runs on your computer is actually this. If I go to here and look at that, click accept, it's this compiled version of the class. And it says decompile.class file, byte version, whatever. It actually turns into this compiled .class file, which is different from your code. And this is actually what's running on your computer. And that moves around and gets optimized and doesn't really look too much like this. My IDE is converting it to something I can read, but normally it would just be like weird bytes, and it wouldn't make much sense to me. And that's that. Jordan is asking, does anybody else get the error unnamed mass package not allowed in module? Jordan, that error comes from probably Eclipse, and what probably happened was you generated a module-info.java file in your IDE. You want to delete that module-info.java. When I try to start a project, it always makes a module instead of a class. Yeah, in Eclipse, there's a checkbox. In fact, maybe I could show you it. Or I showed it in the general session as well. You want to uncheck the checkbox that says module. It's just one of these quirks about Eclipse. It's one of the reasons that it's not that easy to use, is it defaults to doing things like modules. So uncheck the module box. If there is a module there, it creates a module-info.java file. You want to delete that. All right, so that's one of the differences, is the placement of stuff. But you might also notice here that in Java, I'm not able to declare a variable by just typing, let's say, here, x is equal to 1, right? This does not make sense in Java. In Java, if I type here inside of my main, x is equal to 1, that doesn't work. X is not a thing. I actually have to specify the type here. That's one of the core differences Java and Python, probably the biggest one, is that Java has strict types. The types in Java are, generally speaking, more strictly managed than in Python. And this is also something that really confuses people. So somebody before was asking about methods having to explicitly return a certain type. That is true in Java. The return types are specified here. As void means return nothing. Here I can also put static int, let's say add, and this can take an int 1 and int 2 as input, and this will add the two numbers together, right? So we return 1 plus 2. We have to specify the types at every stage. We have to specify the type when we specify what comes out of the method, and we have to specify the type when we say what goes in. This is different than Python because, well, in Python we don't have to specify these things. But you'll get used to it, and it actually has a lot of advantages for readability. You can actually see what your code is doing and what types are going where, and at some cases when you have a big project, it might actually make your life a little bit easier that you know what type everything has to be. Here, David says, or Juan David Guerra says, it takes forever to build when I had add code. Is this a computer thing, or do I have a settings mistake in IntelliJ? IntelliJ likes to index, which means it likes to scan through everything on your computer before you write. So if you just opened it for the first time, there might be a loading bar down here at the bottom, which says indexing. If that's the case, then the reason that you have that issue is it's still indexing and it's going to be really slow. After it has some time to speed up, it'll be faster. I'm a bit slow trying to follow you. What's a package? Do you make a folder for each package? Sure. Well, a package is like a folder in your folder structure. If I open this in my file explorer, you'll see that my Java is arranged into this folder that says source, and then it has my .java file. If I put a folder in here, and I called it my package, that's the same as creating a package in IntelliJ. That's what it is. And then if I move my welcome into that package, and I click refactor, what it's going to do is it's actually going to put my package at the top, and then it's going to be inside the package. That's all a package is. It's like a special kind of folder. So in Java, methods cannot return two different types. That's correct. Java methods can return one type and one type only. You can be a little bit clever about it, and you could say, for example, static object add, something like that. But that's something we'll see later on in the course. That's called polymorphism. How do you uncheck the box in Eclipse? Sure, I just needed to wait for Eclipse to open. Now it's open, so I can show you. So I'm just going to use my default workspace. I'm going to create a new project for you guys in Eclipse to show you how it's done. And I'll do that there in the meantime. But yeah, I'll do that first, and then I'll get to the actual GUI of IntelliJ versus Eclipse versus Thani, and you guys should be pretty clear on the same functions. All of the same functions that exist in Thani exist in both of these IDEs, and they actually look almost identical. So it shouldn't be that hard of a switch. When you create a new project in Eclipse, you create new project. We'll go Java project, right? Next. And then here, we'd enter our name. I'm just going to say Python fellas. And next. And then here, you see this little checkbox that says create module-info.java. You don't want to have that checked. You want to have this unchecked. It's bad. That's the thing that's causing you problems. Make sure you do not check that box. That box is evil, and that's the Eclipse rundown. I'm just going to cancel that now. Okay, now let's get into the actual meat of it, Thani IDE versus the Java IDE. We have a little bit of code here, so we should be able to run things and see how they work. Now, one thing you like to do in Thani is to run. We can do that exactly the same in IntelliJ or Eclipse. See, in IntelliJ, we have the play buttons. Any play button, the green triangle, can run the code. So run, run, all these are run. In Eclipse, similar, we have a green play button that says run. Sometimes it runs the wrong thing. If in Eclipse it runs the wrong thing, you right-click where you want it to run, and you click Run as Java Application. So that's running in all three IDEs. Very simple. Everybody understands how to run, right? What you might not know, what might not be obvious, is how to use that awesome debugger from Thani. Remember when you could do this, debug current script? When you debug current script, you are able to do this step over, step into stuff. Remember that from Thani. It was really helpful, right? Hopefully you guys all used that. Same thing exists in Java, but it's not as obvious. Remember how I said Java doesn't have this entry, or doesn't have a run from top line to bottom line idea? It runs from an entry point. Because Java runs from an entry point, we can't necessarily just debug it line by line like we could in Python. See, in Python, when we run the debugger, it just starts at the top line and works its way down. In Java, when we run with the debugger, it actually has to have a point where it pauses. To specify where it pauses, you just click next to the line you want it to stop at. For me, I'm just going to do the first line. So in Java, if I wanted to run like a Thani debugger on the first line, I put my red dot on the line I want it to pause on, and I click the bug icon. Same style bug icon as Thani. When I click that, it's going to give me a similar interface where I have the same controls. I have step over, just like in Thani, step into, just like in Thani, and it's generally like a simple user interface. And then we can even see that it looks almost the same, where we have this highlight on the line we're currently at, and we can see the values of all our variables. It's almost the same. You guys hopefully recognize this from your time in Python. Similarly, if you have a function or a method, depending on what you call it, you can enter the method or the function by clicking step into. Right? Hopefully you guys are all familiar with that. It's something that's not super obvious because you do have to click the red dot next to your lines. But otherwise, that's the same. The debugger is the same in Java as you're familiar with in Thani. It's the same in Eclipse as well. I've got this blue dot next to the line I want to pause at. I click the bug icon, and it stops at that line, and it shows me the values of all my variables. Debugger is going to be super valuable for you guys as Python developers. And yeah. Where do you get the red dot again? To get the red dot, you just click next to your line number, right? Is there a Thani shell? Is there a shell equivalent? There's not. I'll get to that in a second. So right now I'm just covering the user interface. The user interface is what I'm focusing on at the moment, and then I'll get to all your questions shortly afterwards. I just want us all to be familiar with the interface. So to get the red dot, you click on the line number here, and then when you click on the line number, you're able to skip through the lines and get to all the various stuff that's available in your code. So here we can skip over my method, skip over, click on the side of the line to get the red dot. Now somebody's asking, how do I create a .java file inside of a project? Great question. You right click on your source folder, you click new Java class, and then you can type whatever name you want. So I can say new file, right? And this creates my .java file, and it automatically puts public class in there. That's how you create a file. That's how you get that going in IntelliJ. Now it says, is there a Thani equivalent shell in IntelliJ to test methods quickly? No, you can't actually run a method on its own. Notice I can't actually run add, and I can't actually run my method. That's because to run a method, it has to be of a very specific form, and that is this: public static void main, an array of string called args. To run a method, you have to have this exact form. It can't be anything else. But if you want to test a method, what you can do is you can put a red dot on that method, call it from your main, and run it like that. So that's how you test a method in IntelliJ. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If it doesn't, you can ask a follow-up question. I can explain a bit more detail. But my recommendation for testing methods is call your method from main, put a red dot on the method so it stops the running, and that's that. This will be posted on my courses. Can you explain the package again? Yeah, for sure. So the packages can be confusing. The packages are like a folder. You can see here in my, let's say my 4Python project, I have a package called my package, and it's literally just a file folder. And inside is my .java file. That's all a package is. It's just a folder. There's no need to overthink it. And it has some additional functions. When you put my package at the top of your source code, that will mean that it can see other code in the same package, and it can interact with it. So your files can interact with each other when they're in the same package more so than they can when they're not in the same package. You don't really need to worry about it. In COMP250, we'll get to packages later on in the course in more detail, and we provide them for most of you guys. Or for most of the assignments. Why does my program keep running even if I put a red dot in a certain line? You have to run with the bug icon. You see the bug button at the top? You have to click that one to make it pause on the red lines. If you just click run, it's going to run it normally. If you click the debug icon, it's going to run with the red dots. That's going to help you a lot. I understand it's also confusing, but it's the same as Thani, because in Thani, to make it pause, you have to run the debug button. You can't put the play button. Similarly here, if you wanted to debug, you have to click the bug icon, not the play button. If we're doing an assignment and only creating methods but running them, our main method will be empty, right? Yeah, when you're creating an assignment, you might not be able to use that main method. But remember, Java programs can talk to each other. You don't just have this class. So if I put new file in the same package as welcome, and I make these methods public, well, actually, no, I don't even need to. I can create a main in new file, right? So I can say public static void main string args. And these methods can see each other. Let's not screw that up. Public method string args. These methods can actually see each other, and these classes can see each other. So I can say welcome dot my method, and I can run it from a different class. That way, if you're testing your assignment, you can make a new class called tester, for example. In fact, I can just name this one tester. To tester. And from tester, I'm able to run my method from outside. Why does my program keep running? I already came to that. If we're only doing assignment creating methods but not running them, our main method will be empty, right? Yeah, your main method may or may not be empty, but you can always create more main methods in new classes. Why do we have to create a new class, new object to create a file in Java? In Java, everything is an object. Well, everything you can even write is always part of an object. There's no such thing as just a stray method in Java. If you try to write a method out here outside of a class, it's not going to work. Let's try it here. I'm going to say like, static void my method to. Notice it goes red. It doesn't work. It has to be inside of a class. That's because every single Java piece of code is inside of a class. It has to be inside a class. Otherwise, it doesn't run. That's part of the theory, the philosophy of Java. Can you explain testing methods again? Totally. When you run a method, you want to test a certain method. You put the red dot on it, and it'll pause when you're running it. That'll debug it. That'll help you while running it. If you have a main method, let's say this main method is provided by the assignment, and you can't change it. You can create a new class, let's say called tester, where you can call these methods and you can test them from outside. So let's say I'm not allowed to touch welcome at all. I'm not allowed to make any changes in welcome. I'm not allowed to do anything for welcome. Inside of tester, I can put a red dot on welcome.myMethod, click the debug icon, wait for it to load. One day it will load, and then it's going to pause on this line. I said it's going to pause on this line. There we go. And we're going to step into, and then we can actually see what's happening inside of our method. Okay. What's the difference between having a method public and not public? The difference between a public and a not public method is that a public method can be seen by any code at all. So you notice how tester is able to see welcome, right? Tester is able to see what's going on inside of welcome. But if I make a method private, then it won't be seeing it anymore. So see, my method is currently being run from outside. If I put private in front of that, now here it's going to say it can't use it. It's not going to compile because it says that this method cannot be seen. We're going to go over access modifiers a lot in the upcoming tutorials. It's not something we have to focus on a lot now. It's part of Java syntax, but it's actually kind of above the scope of just getting started. And we will see a lot of detail on access modifiers, which are private, public, static, all that, soon. Not right now. Tutorial is going to cover that. That's later on. Why are we making a method private if it's limiting us? Let's say hypothetically you are working for a bank and you want to make a payment system. But other people have access to that code, and other people might add other Java code. If you keep something private, that means that only your code can access that piece of code, and only that can run. So it increases your security. It makes sure that the only things you trust are modifying things, only things you trust are running code, and that way you can stay secure. Right-click on the package in the new class. Yep, you got it. All right, so that's kind of the essence of the way things run here. What does the red arrow do in the debugger? The red arrow is force step into. So notice how when I was in tester, I was able to step into the method here, my method, and I was able to then see what's going on. With force step into, I can actually step into methods that I didn't write. So let me show you. If I debug this, and I step into this, and then I force step into this, it'll do it even if it's dangerous. See, I've stepped into part of Java's built-in source code. Actually, I think I could even do this with normal step into, but yeah, it's forcing me to do things. It's forcing it to step into even when it otherwise would not allow it, right? It's stepping into it in situations that are perhaps less than common, where you're stepping into built-in Java source code, that kind of stuff. And here we can see that I've stepped into the actual source code of Java, the code that makes the language work. That's one of those features. All right, so does anybody have any more IDE-related questions? I'm happy to answer any IDE differences, anything in coming from Thani to a new IDE now. And if not, I can move on to more Java syntax stuff. So now is your opportunity to ask. Sure. Yeah. In Java, you cannot run a method unless you call it from public static void main string args. Somewhere along the chain, there has to be a main method that calls it. There is actually like a little stipulation to this. There is an exception. There are frameworks like JUnit, which let you run methods like kind of separately, but you will not see those as mandatory content in COMP250. Those are a lot more advanced. They do exist. They're just kind of advanced to developer tools that you'll see in courses like ECSE 223, that kind of stuff. So docstrings, is that a comment that is part of like documentation? Sorry, yeah. Yeah, we don't actually grade you on it in COMP250. We don't read your comments, but you put a slash and then 2 stars above your method. It's called javadoc, and this will show up as documentation. So I can write, for example, this method says hello, and then I can write, for example, that I'm the author, so I can write at author Sasha, that kind of stuff, right? So these do exist in Java. You will not be graded on that in COMP250. We don't care about your commenting. Well, it's not graded in COMP250, but it exists. So documentation is not graded in COMP250. Assuming I properly understand what you mean by docstring. I haven't done Python in a long time, so I'm assuming you mean documentation in the comments. Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. That's kind of like what in Java is gherkin scenarios. Those are not seen in this thing. There's a library for it. We don't do it in COMP250. It's not built into the language. So yeah, you can't actually use the documentation, like the javadoc, to create an automatic test. That doesn't exist in the scope of COMP250. You can do it. It is a thing. You see it in later on courses, upper year courses, where you're working with more advanced frameworks. But you don't have to do it for COMP250. If you want to, you can write a tester using that stuff and go above and beyond, kind of like the people did on our Best of Comp showcase. And you can do really fantastically, but it's not required, and it's not necessarily needed. All right. how do you reference values inside of the string args in our main? I'm not sure you guys are understanding the function of string args, actually. String args does not take input from the user in the terminal. String args only takes arguments when you call your program. So if you have a program that's saved, let's say you have like an executable on your desktop, you can specify launch arguments. So like in your terminal, you can say Java, my program, and then dash and whatever argument you want to give. That is not going to give you like live arguments. It's going to give you arguments at runtime. Right? So the string args you can access by just saying like args1 whatever. So I can say like if args1 dot starts with a, you can do whatever, right? Like you can do this block, but you're not going to have arguments supplied to you like that. I'll show you guys how to take inputs from the command line. What is the Python equivalent for a package? I don't know there is one. Doctest, docstring. Doctest is the function to test. I mean the function. Doctest is the description. Yeah. Can you explain once again how to debug on Eclipse? Sure. You test the examples in your docstring by calling doctest. Yeah, there's similar frameworks that exist in Java, but they're not covered in COMP250. Those frameworks are more advanced. They're called JUnit and Gherkin. You can look into those outside of COMP250 if you prefer. When do we put class at the beginning of our methods before calling them? I'll get to that in a second. But before, you guys had an interesting question here that regards reading from the user, reading input from the user. So yeah, if you want to test a method, you can only call it from a tester. You can't do it from the shell. If you want to take input from a user, what you do is you create what's called a scanner object. So we'll say scanner s is equal to new scanner system.in, and this is read, not the comma, yeah, and then this will need to be imported, so I just alt enter and that imports it for me, and then I can say string, and why is there a closed curly here, string s is equal to, not string st, is equal to s dot next line, and now I can say system.out.println s t, and now this will give me input from the user. Do we need to close the scanner? You don't need to in a lot of the times you're running these programs. Scanner takes input from the user. I think that's what you guys meant. One of you guys asked about taking input from string args, but that's not actually how we interface with the user. The way it interfaces the user is like this. We put the scanner, and now if I can say world to it, and it's going to spit back what I said to it. Okay. When do I need to put class at the beginning of methods before we're calling them? Again, Java is structured in such a way that methods cannot exist outside of a class. Your structure looks like this. You've got a .java file, which contains a class. A class contains methods and variables. So your classes must surround your methods. You cannot have a method outside of a class. You can also not have a method inside of a method. The only place you can put a method is inside a class, like this. All your methods go to classes. There's no methods not associated with class. So it's not like you put class before methods. This is not a method. This is a class. A class can be like a collection of methods, is what you can think about it as. There's no shell equivalent. You can only call it, run it by calling the tester. That's right. There is more advanced stuff, and maybe I can link at the end for you guys, that stuff that exists, but it's not something we're using in COMP250. I think to debug, you select the line with the red dot, and you press on the bug symbol. The rest of the commands are similar to Thani. That's completely correct. Do we need to close the scanner? No, not in this case. What does the scanner do? It takes input from the user. Do you have to specify the type of the input, or a string int could work? Well, if you want to specify the type of the input, you can just say next int, and then here it can say, instead of string st, it would be int, right? And you can do whatever type you want. So here you can do next bool. You can take whatever kind of input you guys want, and you just do s.next and the type of variable. Is main a method? Yes, it is. What does scanner method do? It takes input from the user. Can't find symbol for scanner. You have to import scanner. So at the top, you have to put import Java util scanner. IntelliJ does it for you. Eclipse does not. What is shell? I took 204. We don't use Thani. Shell would be like running your, I believe that's running your code through this interactive part called the shell. What does s and st mean? I just named my variables that. So this name can be whatever I want. I could call the string Sam or name, or that's just the name representing that variable. If I have multiple classes that interact with each other in a program, do they all have to be in a package? Do they all need to have a main method? No, they do not need to all have a main method. Your class, no class requires a main method. You only need a main method when you have to run. And if they interact with each other in a package, you only need to have one entry point, one main. You usually want to have testers as well. I get it, but are we calling methods in the main methods? We don't write class.method. We just write method. Do we need to write class.method anywhere? That depends on in what situation. So if I am inside the welcome class, I don't need to say class dot because it's implied that we're inside of welcome, right? Within the scope of welcome, these methods are just referred to as add and my method, right? But inside of tester, I could write another one here called my method because this is like each class has its own sort of namespace. Each class can have things that are named the same thing. So if I have a my method here as well, and what should it be? It should be a, let's say, a static string my method, and it's gonna like return yellow. This will be different from welcome.myMethod because it depends where it's written. So here I can write, system.out.println my method, and we can't actually just print the method because that's just going to print the output of the method. And then we can also type welcome.myMethod, and these are two different methods, right? That's why we need to say class.method versus just the method. It depends on where it's located. So inside your class, you don't have to put class dot, but if it's from outside, you might have to. Can you go over how to create a class inside of a package? I'm trying to do it. Yeah, you just right-click on the package, you do new class. In Eclipse, it's also the same. You just right-click on your package. Right here, where are we right now? We're in some kind of project. You right-click on your package right here, like week 1. You do new class. It's the exact same in both of them. What does my method statement do? The my method statement here declares the method. So it creates the method. It starts to exist. And here we call it. So we just say print whatever my method returns. Are we supposed to have multiple projects or packages for each assignment? Yes, you are. I can flash up that slide for you guys again if you want. So here is the kind of quick cheat sheet for what you guys should be doing for assignments and stuff related to packages. You can take a screenshot of that and remember that. It's also posted on my courses. That'll help you out regarding when you have to create packages, when you have to create classes. That should help you out, hopefully. Java class does not show up when I right-click on it. You have to be right-clicking on a valid package inside of the source folder. If that's the case, it should work. Otherwise, it might not. Okay, I'm opening the floor to questions once again, if you have any, and I'll be happy to go through and answer them. I know I'm going a bit fast. I just need to conclude a lot of content in a relatively short time. So, yeah. Where should the working folder be located? In the users folder? The working folder is located by default in the users folder, and you can change it if you want to, but you don't have to. I keep it in the same place it was at by default. But it's a package inside of the source code folder. What IDE are you in, Sophia? I can help you with that maybe more at the end of the session because I do want to get through a bit more content before I get into detail debugging your specific case. But if you can let me know which IDE that is, I can show you how I would do it in that IDE. All right. So now we can move on and I can show you guys a simple program for Java. And you guys can see maybe a little bit of the loop syntax, a little bit more of what we saw in the document. I'll put it in welcome perhaps. And what should we do? How about we do, if you remember in COMP250, we can, I don't know if you have the same assignments as the ones I have access to, but we can make that smoother ordering system. So let's first write in our comments what we want to do. So we want to say we want to give the user, let's say 4 options for smoothies. User can say whatever they want. We will give them only one of the options. Right? Now we say, and I'll maximize this as well, just so we can write some more things. Now we'll say each smoothie has a price that we know, and at the end, we tell the user the final cost, right? We'll do this quick thing. There's going to be like a paraphrase version of the one from COMP250. And then let's also say, yeah, there's toppings as well. So we'll say users pick toppings. All right, and this will give us a good introduction to our syntax because it's something you guys have seen before. So first off, let's start off by starting our scanner. So we can say scanner scan is new scanner, and then it's on system.in. That means we're scanning the terminal. Notice how system.out is how we print, and our scanner is how we read. Right? Now we'll prompt the user, so we'll say, system.out.println, welcome to smooth smoothies. what kind would you like? And we'll take, let's say, 1 is our onion, 2 is our berry, and 3 is our banana. And 4 will be our Montreal roast beef. Right, and we'll let people choose between these toppings. The glass shards are a great idea, but first let's save what the user said. So let's say string choice of smoothie is equal to scanner dot next line. Now let's say a user can pick the toppings. So we'll say system.out.println. Now we want to put some logic here, right? Because they're only allowed to choose the Montreal roast beef. I know I'm going different from the original ones. So before the user changes the topics, let's actually tell them that they can only do the Montreal roast beef. So we'll say system.out.println. You chose, and then let's say the choice of smoothie string. And then we say, but we only have Montreal roast beef, so that's what you get. Right, well now there's one issue here, is that we only do one thing, right? We don't actually care if the user chose roast beef or not, so we can say if choice of smoothie dot equals, when we compare strings we use dot equals, we don't use like the double equals, we use dot equals, and we say dot equals Montreal roast beef, and I have to put that in quotation marks because it's a string, so Montreal roast beef. Or if I want to put an or, I put the 2 lines, choice of smoothie dot equals, and then we just do 4. We'll say, great, you picked the right one. Great, you made the right choice. And else, so if we want to do an if-else block, we just do else this. Now, we want to have probably a cost associated with the various kinds of smoothies, right? So here I can say, let's say double total price, and a double is a number with decimal points. Price is equal to 0. And we can associate a price with each of these things. So onion will be, let's say, $3.99. Berry will be $5.99. Banana will be negative 6.99 or 88, why not? And Montreal roast beef will be 0.065. Right? Now we'll say, regardless of which one we do, so regardless of the if else, we'll say the total price. Now we want to add 0.065, so we do plus equals 0.065. All right, so now we get to the more challenging part. We have to pick our toppings. So here, when we pick our toppings, we'll have to say, system.out.println. What topping do you want? Now let's say we want 1 glass shards. Here, S 3.99. 2 tapioca pearls. Here, 0.00, and let's say 3. What else? What other toppings could exist? Kidney beans. S 0.50. Right. Now here we have to have a different kind of statement because we have multiple possible situations for what possible toppings we can have, and we need to have 3 different real options. So we'll say string. Well, let's say int, because we're asking for numbers, right? 1, 2, or 3. So we'll say int topping choice is equal to scanner.nextInt. And we'll say, now we'll do what's called a switch. So we'll say switch topping choice. Now this is a new syntax you probably haven't seen in Python. Now we can do case 1, case or break, right? Case 2, break. And case 3. Now what this does is it's kind of like an if-else chain, but not really. Here it's saying that if it's 1, we run certain code. If it's 2, we run certain other code. And if it's 3, we run different code. So in the case of 1, we'll say, system.out.println glass, nice. And then we'll say price plus equals. And what's the cost of glass? It's $3.99. And then here we can do a similar kind of block for case 2. We'll say pearls, nice. I'll show you how, for switch, you do switch, and then in circle brackets, you put the variable that is the subject of the switch. So here it's saying case 1 means if topping choice is equal to 1, you do this. Case 2 means if topping choice is equal to 2, you do this. Case 3 means if topping choice is equal to 3, you do this. The reason I put break is that otherwise it was going to cascade down the list of cases and just do them in order. This actually runs like Python. It's going to run from top to bottom, regardless of what you put. So now I'm going to say for pearls, it's going to be plus 0. In fact, I don't even need to put that. And I'll put break. And now for case 3, I want to do kidney beans. And add 50 cents to the price. The point of different cases without break is if you want to have a structure where you want to do all of the actions except for the ones like before what you chose. What do I mean by that? I mean like there are situations where you want to run all of the code in the options, but there's some situations where you want to skip some steps. So your input could be how many steps you want to skip, and then it'll do all the steps after the ones you skipped. Does that make sense? Like you can skip steps using the case statement. You can take as input to the switch which steps you don't want to take, and then after that, all of the ones after that will run. The case switch also has a default, so that the default is if it doesn't fall into any of those other categories, what it's going to say, and it's going to say system.out.println, println, not valid, try again. And now here, since it's not valid, try again, why don't we actually make this loop until a certain condition is met? Is default mandatory? No, default is not mandatory, but it's usually a good idea to put it. Let's say that we want to make sure the user has a valid input. We're not going to let them get away with not choosing a topping. So we'll say, I'll get to the more on the switch statement in a second. I just want to do a loop here. So we say while, exclamation mark, topping, selected, and we'll run this in this while loop. And that means it's going to run until that condition is met. Now, you said I wrote while exclamation mark topping selected. What that means is I'm going to have a Boolean topping selected, which is just true or false, equals false. And now when I select my topping, I'm going to say topping selected equals true. Equals true. And now I'm going to do that for all of these cases. And this way, until the user selects a valid topping, it's going to keep running in this loop. Right? Now, does a switch statement only work with one variable? Can there be more conditions in the cases? Switch statement only works on, well, actually, I've not done ever a switch statement with more than one thing. It's possible that you can do it with more than one, but I've only ever done it with one. Why do you put exclamation mark? Exclamation mark means not. So if you refer to the doc I sent in the beginning of the session, the equivalent syntax for not in Java is the exclamation mark. So this is saying while not topping is selected. So while topping is not selected, we're going to loop this and just make the user choose the topic forever. All right. But now we have our topping. We have it selected. And now what else do we need to do? We need to choose our topping. And then each smoothie has a price that we know at the end. So let's let the user know the price. But we'll also multiply it by taxes. So we'll say system.out.println. Oh, we don't even save what our toppings or what our choice was, right? So let's save our choice as well. So we can say string topping is equal to null. Null means you don't assign it any value, so it's just completely empty. And then in all these cases, we'll say, topping equals glass. And here topping is equal to pearls. Equals pearls. And this is not great code because I have a lot of repetition. You can write this easier, but I'm just trying to get you guys in on the syntax and to get you familiar with variable assignments and all this. So topping equals pearls and topping equals beans. Right now we remember all these things. So we can say you've chosen a plus choice of smoothie. Smoothie with, and that is via quotation marks, with topping choice as a topping. And we'll say subtotal is, and then what's our subtotal? It's going to be total cost. Right, so here, yeah, I'll upload everything to my courses, don't worry. Now let's see if this actually works properly, because I might have done it wrong, and that would give us an opportunity to debug, and this might go a couple minutes over time as well. So if I just run my main method now, it's going to say, welcome to Smooth Smoothies, what would you like? I'm going to say onion. It's going to say, you chose onion, we only have Montreal roast beef. So what topping do you want? Remember, we're doing this as an int. Here we used scanner.scanLine. So for line, I entered whatever I want as a string, and it read my string. Now this one, I'm scanning for an int. So I need to put a number. Which topping would I like? I like kidney beans, but tapioca pearls are free. So I'm going to go for tapioca pearls. And it says I've chosen an onion smoothie with pearls as a topping, and my price is 0.065. That's because it's 0 plus 0.065. Now we can see if this works in a different situation. Let's say I chose Montreal roast beef, and the topping I want is glass shards. And now my cost is this strange price. That's because this is what happens when you add $3.99 to 0.065, and it looks like there was a weird math thing, but still, it looks like it's fine. What else could we test? Oh yeah, we wanted to put the GHG and HST, so I'll just put system.out.println. I don't know what the GST is, so I'm just going to assume it's 14%. GST, and then I'll say 0.014 times total price. No, it's 0.14, isn't it? 14%? I wish it was 0.014. Now, if I run it again, we can have the GST. And I'll get to your question about the switch statement shortly. So let's say we have a banana smoothie with a negative price, but we don't care. It's just going to make us get roast beef. I'm going to get kidney beans as my topping. And my GST turned out to be 7.91 cents. Okay, so I'm still unclear about how our code chooses one of the choices based on our input. Is that because the input number corresponds to the case number? Let me show you with the debugger. It's a good opportunity to show you the debugger as well. I'm going to run it with the debugger, and we're going to watch our code run line by line, and that should make it very clear exactly what's going on. So we start off with creating the scanner. The scanner is just, well, a scanner, and our total price is 0. Now, I'll explain to you switch as we run. I'll explain it again here as we go. So now it's going to print, and after the print statement, after we step over that, you'll notice that it prints it out. Now it's going to wait for my next line. My next line will be, let's say, berry. And I'll go to the next line, and it says that my choice is not Montreal roast beef, and it's not 4, so it's not going to enter this part of the if statement. Instead, it's going to go to the else statement, and it's going to print you chose whatever choice of smoothie. Right, that's fine. My price is going to get added, and now it's going to ask me for what topping I want. So now my topping is not selected. I'm going to put the topping I want. Let's say I want glass shards, and it's going to go to the next line. Now it's saying that the topping selected is false. There's no topping selected. My string of the topic choice is null because I don't know what I chose. And now it's going to loop until I've selected the proper kind of topping. It's going to say that my topping choice is the next int. Since I sent 1, it's going to say that it's 1. See? Topping choice is 1. That means that it's going to see, does 1 equal any of my cases? It's going to check. Let's say, does case 3 equal 1? No, we're not going to enter this case. Does case 2 equal 1? No, we're not going to enter this case. Does case 1 equal 1? Yes, it does. So we're going to enter this. If all of them don't equal, it's going to go default. If one of them equals, it's going to step into that case. Does that make sense? All right. So now it's going to enter case 1 because mine is 1. It's going to say glass nice, topping is glass, total price is $3.99, and the topping was selected. Now that the topping was selected, you can see that here, topping selected is true. And this loop is going to break. It's not going to stay in this loop anymore. And it's going to exit the loop because it's no longer waiting for me to select a proper topping. And it's going to be done. Right? It's going to go through and it's going to say my total price. Does switch work like try? No, it doesn't. When would we use this instead of if-else statements? you use a switch if you have a lot of if-else statements. Let's imagine I had 500 toppings. You don't want to write if and then the brackets and then all the stuff. You don't want to write here, for example, like if topping choice is equal to 1, whatever, right? See how this is going to get long. If I then put else if topping choice is equal to 1 or is equal to 2, I guess, right? This is going to get really long. And I'm going to write topping choice a lot. That's where we're going to use a switch. Now, what does it say? It says that it can be an enhanced switch statement. That's some more advanced Java syntax. So you can change the syntax like that in IntelliJ if you want to. That's up to you, but you don't have to. Enhanced switch statements are not part of COMP250. What's the difference between step over and step in? Step over just hops over the line you're doing. It's not going to apply in this one, but it's going to apply here. Hold on, I need to put a breakpoint here. A breakpoint is the red dot. If I do step over, it just hops over top of this method, right? It doesn't care what my method is doing. It's just going to ignore it and go over top. If I do step into, it's actually going to enter the method, and it's going to show me what's going on inside of the method. Does that make sense? Do we have to call it case 1, or could it have been case glass if the topping was a string? Yes, you can do whatever you want for the topping, or for the switch. It's because my switch is on an int, it has to be an int. So since the type of a variable I'm doing is an int, this switch has to have ints as its members. So if I put glass here, it's going to say you can't do that because it's not an int, right? It's saying that here it's a switch to do with an int. It's not going to work. But if it's to do with int, it will work. Hopefully that's clear to you, Sam. If it's not, I can ask again. Can we say case 1 or glass? We can't say case 1 or glass because those are two different types of variables. 1 is an int, glass is a string. So you couldn't do that. But you could do, I think you are able to do multiple in one case, though that's something I've not brushed up on a ton. In fact, let me just Google it right now. So multiple conditions case Java. Yeah, you can. Actually, it's a really simple syntax. So here you could do case, let's say 0, and case 1, and see how we don't have a break statement. It's just going to go cascade down to the next case statement. Pretty simple, right? Now, so this is be the equivalent of 1 or glass. You could do case 0 or 1. This is essentially case 0 or 1. But they both have to be strings for it to be 1 or glass. How do we assign value to each case in switch? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you ask in a maybe different wording? Are you going to share this code? Yeah, it's going to be on my courses. Sorry, I still don't get it. Sorry, what was your question in the beginning? I can try to explain it again. Does IntelliJ have a variable explorer? By variable explorer, do you mean like you can see where the variable came from and like where it was defined? In which case it does. You can right-click on a variable, let's say topping choice, for example, here. And then here you can say, for example, analyze, and then you have lots of different options here for your analysis. It's very detailed. Or you can, for example, if you go to declaration, it's going to show you where the variable was declared. This is more obvious in bigger projects because you have lots of different places things are declared. You can also go to implementations, which shows you where it's used, and all of these sort of things. And if you're in the debugger, then all of your variables get listed in this variable view. This is the wrong code. I want to run welcome. So I'll just debug welcome. I said I'll debug welcome. Yeah, IntelliJ Light mode is off-putting. And in welcome, I will go through, and you can see all of our variables have their values listed here. You can switch between debugger and console when you're in the debugger, so that might have been why you were wondering the difference between these two views is you just have to switch between the variable and the thing. Can you repeat what is a scanner? A scanner is just something that looks for a user to input. So if you're in the console, the scanner will look for your inputs. Are you able to scan integers as strings from user input? Yeah, sure. So anything that you type into your console will be a string. But when you press on your keyboard, everything that comes off your keyboard is always a string. So anything you scan does take the form of a string. It just so happens to be that you can, in Java, scan specifically for an int. So if you know that the user is always going to send an int, you don't have to do the math. Like you don't have to do the conversion. You don't have to type integer.value of the string. You can just take the integer directly. All right. Are there any further questions? I'll just move on to a pure student question section now, since we don't have too much time remaining, and I can get to whichever sections you want. If you're wondering why I have these pop-ups and that thing at the top, that's for the recording. So when you scrub through, you can see what the topic is at the moment, so you can just get to the part you care about quickly. So don't be off-put by the massive titles coming up. That's for the recording people. So do you mind showing us how to debug in IntelliJ again? 100%. So you just take press the red dot. In Eclipse, you just double-click next to the line. You get the blue dot. And then you click the bug icon, just like Thani. So here, I press the red dot next to my method. And then I just click the bug icon, and it's going to debug. Very, very simple. And once you debug, you have the same controls as in Thani. You'll be familiar with it. You've got step over. You've got step into. It's exactly like Thani. It's the exact same user interface. In fact, Thani was designed to be similar to these more like professional IDEs to get you guys basically knowing it from the beginning. So the console is kind of like the shell in Thani, except you can't run code out of it. That's exactly true. It's just like the shell in Thani, but you can't put Java code in it because Java code needs to be compiled. You can't just run Java code from nothing. You have to actually compile the Java code first, and only then will it be able to run. Otherwise, it's the same thing, yes. And in Eclipse, it's also the same thing. It's called console. The user interface between Eclipse and IntelliJ is similar. Do you write all your code in the main method? You don't have to. So if I wanted to, I could make this into a method. So I can just take all of this code. All right. Oh, I just said all of this code, so I shouldn't have missed some. I could take all of this code. I can take it out of my main method. I can put it into a method here, and I can call it, let's say, static void smoothie. And in static void smoothie, I can have all this. And then from my main, I can just type smoothie. And then this will do the exact same thing as what I did before. So I don't have to write all my code in the main. I could write all my code in smoothie and then just call it from main. And here, when I call main now, I have to step into. And for me to step into, then it'll be the exact same as if I ran it otherwise, right? So you don't have to write all your code in the main method. Just for the simplicity of it, to keep it really easy for you guys to hop on, I was doing everything in main. But again, you do not have to. That's all on your own free choice. Can you have two different projects open on the left of your screen? Totally. So, well, you can have two different files. For example, I can right-click on this, and I can click split right, and then my printstream.java and my tester.java are here. Or, for example, if I want my tester at the same time as my welcome, I can have them both at the same time. And what is A equals input in Java? I'm still confused. Is that what scanner does? That's exactly what scanner does. So if we look at our Google Doc, then we'll see that the equivalent of saying in Python, let's say S is equal to, to say, come on, why is Thani not working for me? Okay, I guess Thani doesn't want to cooperate with me right now. Oh, that's because I'm running, that's why. So if I want to say S is equal to input, hello, tell me your name, then the equivalent of that in Java would be to say, I'll put it here, so scanner S is equal to new scanner system.in, and then it's going to be system.out.println tell me your name, and then it'll be string S, or I guess string name is equal to s.next line. And now it needs to be imported, so if I hover over scanner, I can click import class, and there it's done. So these are equivalent syntax between Java and Python. To do input, you have to do s.nextLine as that. All right, if there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll be wrapping up shortly. And that will be that. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any further questions you have. Appreciate the sentiment, Daniel. What's the difference between next line and next int? Remember, Java has explicit types. So in Java, there's a difference between a string and a number. So when you take next int, you'll have to assign it to an int. But that'll also mean that we can do this kind of thing, like a case 1. Whereas if you take a string, you have to treat it like a string. It's just because of that. And I'll post the code on my courses. How do we save our code in IntelliJ? IntelliJ is auto-saving. So if you like on Google Docs, you know how on Google Docs, when you write, everything just saves as you go? IntelliJ is the same. Everything just gets saved while you write it. You don't need to worry about saving. And with Eclipse, to save, you just Control S. So similar. For sure. Glad you enjoyed the explanations. And yeah, if anybody has further questions, again, how do you save it in your files? You want to do file I/O, like you want to, for example, write something instead of system.println, you want to print something to a file. Is that what you want to ask, or do you mean like how do we save our .java files? I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean, Lewis. Oh, for code post. Okay, so for code post, you just open in Explorer and then you hand in the .java files. So if in my file explorer I have this tester.java and welcome.java, if this was your assignment, you just drag these into code post directly. You just take your .java files and you put them in code post. To get them in Eclipse or IntelliJ is the same. In Eclipse, you can like right-click your .java file. You can show in System Explorer, and that does the exact same thing as in IntelliJ, where you can go on your code and you can right-click, open in Explorer. Both of them will just give you access to the .java file, and then you can drag that into code post. That's how you submit code. What would be the equivalent? Would next line be equivalent as next string? Yeah, that's correct. Next line is a delimited string. What that means is that it considers it to be the next string when you press enter. It splits the string on enters, and every time you call next line, it gets the next one with a new line. That's what next line is. You can also just do .next, and .next will let you have a multi-line input. That is the difference. I can get into like the buffers and the streams and stuff, but it would be a little bit different. Could you explain the picture you suggest us using for assignments and quizzes? Sure, I'll put that up again for you. So here, I've got this little slideshow. These are up on my courses as well. And these are just telling you how I recommend you organize yourself. So these are already up on my courses. They were from the general session, and there's lots of detail on this in the general session. If you're wondering about this, you can watch the recording for that. It's already up. And you can see in great detail the explanations regarding this project organization. This was some of the stuff that people in ECSE 202 were having trouble with, so it was covered a lot for them. For you guys, it's a bit less relevant because you guys are brand new to it, so you'll get started on the right track for organization anyways. But from ECSE 202, they might have been started on the wrong track for organization, so we just needed to go into a bit of detail on how we like to do it in COMP250. But yeah, that's kind of those slides. You're welcome to screenshot, and you're also welcome to just take them off my courses where they are available. To save something in IntelliJ, where can you find that in the menu? IntelliJ does auto-saving, so you don't need to actually save your files at all. Everything is like Google Docs. It just saves as you write. You don't need to save anything. It's auto-saved. If you want to find your file in your Explorer, you just right-click on your file, open in Explorer, and that will show it in your File Explorer, and you can submit it from there. All right, if there's any further... Oh yeah, thanks a ton for the series. Yeah, of course. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope that helps you with Java. And that will be enough to get you guys started on COMP250 for the Java portion. And again, if you guys want to contribute anything to the Google Doc, you're welcome to add your own comments and suggestions. I'm happy to crowdsource a very complete and thorough Python to Java guide. If there's something that you know about that I don't, you're welcome to put it there. Can I ask you a question about code I'm trying to write? By all means, you can ask any code-related questions you like. When it comes to the assignments, we ask that you don't share code during any sessions that are public, so not during lectures, not during tutorials, not during any of those, but during sessions like this, it's okay. Can I share my code? It's on the exercises. You can share exercises code with other students. It's not graded. We don't mind if you share them, but we really recommend you do them on your own just so that you can get the practice. And yeah, but you're still allowed to share your exercises code with other students. That's not it's not prohibited. But now would not be an ideal time to do a screen share or that kind of stuff because my setup is kind of weird and I don't really have the means to do an incoming screen share with the way I'm streaming. I'm doing it through OBS and it's a weird hacked Zoom thing. So I can't really easily see your screen. But I'd be happy to help you during office hours, and I'd also be happy to help you on Piazza or wherever else you might want to come. I do run office hours. They're coming up next week, and so does Julia, and so do all the other TAs. That might be a better time for one-to-one support, but if you have a quick question about Java syntax or your code, you're welcome to ask here as well. Where is the doc with all the info from Java? I'll send you the link again. I sent it in the chat before, but I'll send it once again, and that will hopefully help you guys out. What's going on here? Publish it as the web? No, I'm just gonna share, and then copy the link. Give me a second. I'm just going back to Google Docs to get the link back. I don't have it open right now. That should work. Send to, okay, copy link to everyone, and bam, there you go. I'm trying to get Scanner to work for the password question. I want to run a password and it's not working. You see, I don't know the specifics of your code and like what's working in your code, but I could take a look at that during office hours and such like that. When you're using the Scanner, you got to make sure that Scanner is imported. So you might make sure at the top you have import Java util Scanner. And then if something's not working past that, you can use the debugger by putting the red dot and see exactly what your code is doing. Chances are, by running it with the debugger and watching your code run, you can identify what your problem is. All right, last call for questions if you have any. Otherwise, I will be dipping from it shortly. And I appreciate Lord Farquaad joining us today as well. Alrighty. For sure. All right, everyone have an awesome time. If you have any questions that you didn't have a chance to ask now, or if you're in the recording, Piazza is there for you, office hours are there for you, and there will be tutorials starting on next week. So lots of opportunities to ask your questions if you weren't able to today. I hope everybody has a fantastic day, and good luck transitioning. If you have any further Java Python questions, I'll be happy to answer, and if there's a huge amount of them, I could do another session for Python people. But I think that this should cover just about everything. All right, have a great time, guys. Farewell.